Here at St. Ben's and St. John's, many are surprised to learn that these were once Native majority campuses. In 1890, 60% of students at the monastery schools were Native and 50% at the Abbey schools. These Native students were not part of regular academic programs. They were students of the industrial schools. Starting in the late 1800s, the government attempted to annihilate Native communities by separating children from their families and sending them to boarding schools, where their culture was forbidden. While some parents sent their children willingly, the government threatened to confiscate the homes of families who refused to give up their children. There once were hundreds of schools like these, not just the ones that operated on our campuses, although these were here in the 1880s and 1890s. And the Order of St. Benedict also operated 2 reservation-based schools, one at White Earth and one at Red Lake. Our institutions were once agents of colonization, complicit in the government's goal of forcing assimilation through family separation. We have more to gain in redressing our past than in hiding from it. Where we once were agents of assimilation, we can become champions for decolonization, forming meaningful alliances that strengthen Native nations on their own terms.
So in short, colonization completely destroyed Native food systems, and it has been extremely difficult for Native tribes and communities to be self-sustainable because of everything that was stolen from them. There is now a revitalization and a push to bring back food sovereignty to Native communities, and Dream of Wild Health plays a very important role in this effort. So the slogan we use at Dream of Wild Health is "We grow seeds and we grow leaders." Additionally, as I mentioned before, I began my journey with Dream of Wild Health as a youth in high school. And this is because Dream of Wild Health believes that the youth are the future and has consistent youth programming throughout the summer for a variety of ages of different Native youth. But before I close, I would like to make a call to action and say that the time is now. Decolonization is an active process and everyone needs to take part in it. This process needs support and it needs your support. And I encourage you to see how you can support the Native communities around you and uplift Native voices because they have been silenced for so long. And there's so much pain and trauma that goes along with that. Especially given our institutional history, we have an obligation to do better and to promote change on campus. There are many initiatives that are present here that just need your support. So I encourage you to reach out and learn how to be an ally, an advocate, and a support system for the Native community.
So this is a timeline, and what this is it more or less is a summary of some of the major events that we have found throughout the research. So just to go over the basics. So in about 1878, as you can see, you have the dates. So the 3 founders of these schools, who were Sisters Ioba Braun, Philomene Ketten, and Father Aloysius Hermanutz, all were German or first generation German families, arrive at the White Earth Reservation in 1945. The boarding school closed and it became a day school till around, if you can see where my mouse is, about here, so around the 1970s. One other important thing to note is that the relationship that was shown here, it was very much a school, but it's important to note that the school was just a method of assimilation. Put bluntly, the people who came to this school didn't really fully believe in any idea of acculturation or equity or anything like that. This was fundamentally not only an assimilation tactic. There's quotes from the founders of the school saying that they believed the boarding school was the best way to educate and assimilate because it allowed the largest method of control over other forms of education because the students were there year-round almost. There is a lot we can learn from outside of this history because while we know currently a lot about how it worked and how it operated and why it operated, if you can't really tell from everything I've explained, we know so much about the Benedictines and what they thought and how it grew and evolved, but there's still very little we know about the students, and there's still very little we know about the oral histories and the relationships and their interactions with this. And so we're very lucky to have the testimonies we do from the students, and we hope through partnerships and work and continuing to explore and find other ways we can continue to put students at the forefront as they deserve to be at the start and should be restored to.
Through this process, we found school photographs, large photos, large group class photos, pictures of the children in the class playing, photographs of the spaces and classrooms. And in total, in the end, I found about 150 photographs. For this project, our specific goal was to be able to share the photographs with their respective tribes, and that was a pretty special thing to do, considering that a good amount of these pictures hadn't been seen in like over 100 years. So in these articles, we were able to find and learn more about specific events, and even some of the events we weren't even previously aware of as a school. And so this catalog can help us analyze how our institutions' publications have been representing Native communities for over 130 years.
The first is an excerpt from an article written by Father Doug Mullen in a 2007 issue of the Abbey Banner. The excerpt goes as follows. The federal Indian policy sought to assimilate Indian children into the dominant Euro-American culture and society by educating and socializing them away from their families and traditional culture. The policy was a failure from the start and, fortunately, short-lived. It is now recognized that the plan would have amounted to cultural genocide. While there were undoubtedly many good intentions and even positive results for the children who attended these schools, if these schools had been successful in their primary purpose, the loss of Native cultures and identities would have been a great evil. I also want to stress that decolonization, the subject of this talk, is not finished once we have conducted research or condemned the actions of our fathers. Rather, we must continue the process of decolonization through concerted action.
Listening to anyone who is willing to share their lived experiences is always a pleasure, but being able to make that tangible connection between the Ojibwe culture and research to it in actual practice was a highly unique experience. Wild rice is incredibly significant to the Ojibwe culture in multiple ways. It plays a key role in the story of how they came to this land. Eating it can have a deep spiritual connection. It's a staple, healthy food, and it's an essential avenue for community building and bringing people back their cultural roots. Pipelines such as Line 3 can disproportionately impact Native lands and peoples, and this TCP could act as another barrier against development. During the past year, I've started building a nonprofit organization called Gajadin, pronounced G-Ja-Din. It's an Ojibwe word meaning to guard or watch over. This organization came about as another way to work within the truth and reconciliation framework between CSB, SJU, and White Earth that this panel has been discussing. The overall goal of Gajadin is to further aid in rebuilding relationships between White Earth and CSB and SJU to move forward towards a brighter and more equitable future.
You know, the way that it has been for the past couple of years now has been really transformational. It's been a very healthy experience. I feel that you know, the work that you all have done, it will build the archives for the tribe. It will allow families to see photographs of loved ones that they've never been able to see. It will potentially lead to repatriation. You know, some of the work that that Dan had done, it allows for me to document lines of evidence. So that can be applied to any institution anywhere in the country that falls under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. So being able to pull documentation that's held within your archives could return, you know, hundreds or thousands of items or bits of information here and there. I'm grateful for everything that you all have done, and I'm very much looking forward to our continued work together.
And first, I have to acknowledge Sister Mary Therese Woida, the monastery archivist. Thank you so much for all of the time you've spent with our students at the monastery archive. We would not be able to do what we've been doing without you. I encourage all of you to follow Gajadin as it develops. And if anyone is ever interested in knowing ways in which they can get involved or help, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. There are lots of opportunities. This is important work that we're called to do and that benefits everyone.